Welcome to this week's episode of Leader to Leader. We're talking with UWF's own alumni, Ron Jackson. He is the past president of Saltmarsh, Cleveland Gund from 1990 to 2015. Insights into what great leaders do, how they communicate, and mostly tips for those future leaders that are up and coming. Take a listen to his insights, learn, and enjoy the conversation between Dean Rick Fountain and Ron Jackson. Okay, welcome to Leader podcast. I'm just thrilled to be amongst leaders in this room today. And Ron Jackson, thank you very much for joining us and kind of partaking in our little corner of the world with our dean. And I'm really super excited to have you because you've been so involved not only in the local community but also with University of West Florida. And for that, I just really want to thank you for being a part of what we hold true and is important to us. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I think if you're successful in the business world, you should give back to the communities and the entities like UWF that help you become successful.
Yeah,
it's kind of your responsibility to do that, I believe.
So part of the theme that has come through here is exactly that, which is community. And my question, I'll launch the question of when did you realize that in your career? Meaning you're now at a different place through different experiences and years of looking out of a different lens. When did that all come together? Because I think, and let me couch this a little bit, is when we're young and we're assertive and some are aggressive, we learn along the way, and there's a point that you get to that you say, you know what, I'm here and I'm leading and I want to give back. Do you remember that in your career?
Well, that is hard to remember exactly what it was, but it made me think that I needed to give back. But I will say that along my career, your first few years in public accounting, you're trying to figure out public accounting, and you're working on your technical skills, how to work on a team, and those kinds of things. And as I rose up through the ranks in the firm, at some point I started running into a lot of evidence, if you will, of my wife's family and how involved they were in the Pensacola community. And her grandfather was a great community leader. It was a great example. He was not around, but seeing what he had done in his life and his career was a big motivation to try to give back to the community. And there were, I guess, some probably consultants to our industry over the years that, part of their theme was to help firms determine their culture and to encourage them to give back to the community and how that translates into more success.
Yeah.
And the more you give, the more you get.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed like the right thing to do.
And I have to agree with that. And I know Rick's very involved in many different, probably similar, but many different areas across. And I guess talking about leadership and talking about some of those skills, what would you say is, if you were to give advice to somebody at this point, what is a skill that you would say is at the top? And is that a skill that you worked on?
Well, there was a lot of things I had to work on. Work in progress for sure. I would say to leaders, people coming into leadership, lead by example. Treat people the way you would want to be treated. Be transparent. Have integrity. And if you're going to if you're going to promise to do something, do it. And if you can't, go back and take corrective action and explain to people why you couldn't. My parents were big on integrity, in the business world, and they really taught all of us, certain values, and those values are, very, very important. Fairness, accountability, transparency, those kinds of things I think are extremely important in leadership today. I mean, large corporations, you may be able to lead them with hype and with demands, being very demanding and so forth. But in small and mid-sized businesses, you're dealing with people daily. And how you act, how you conduct yourself really has a big impact on those folks that are following you. So it's extremely important to show integrity. It's extremely important to have integrity, to operate with integrity, operate with transparency. All those things I think.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's where, Rick, that's where I see a lot of what comes out of what you do and how you do it. It's not necessarily what you say. A lot of times it's how you say it, but it also is thoughtful, if you will. And so to me, integrity is a big one. That's a huge leadership. But is it a skill, Or is it, gosh, you're referring back to your parents? Is it? So I guess my question is, go ahead.
It's a core value.
Yeah.
And either you have it or you don't. And if you don't, it's a shame, But is it a skill? No, I guess it's not a skill. It's a value that is taught to you, hopefully, by, parents, by colleges, by the rules that we live by in our profession.
And I think that it is, and I know that Rick's about to say something. I can hear him think. And this is, like I say, it's not in a script. It's nothing. But I think you just said something that is so valuable, which is, it is up to us in education, at our level in higher education, to also instill that and show that by example. And I never really, Ed Rinelli said it was what we're doing is noble. And I love that. But I also, if I could just pluck that out so that we can hear it again, is it's up to us in higher ed, no matter what we're at, where we are, is to show that, to be that, to, even highlight the integrity. What does that look like? Because if we have people coming up that may not have that background, I think then it's up to us. I could be off on that. What are you thinking, Rick?
I was thinking about the term integrity and how interchangeable it is with Ron Jackson and the exemplary life he's lived personally and as a leader at his firm. And I've always been touched by that. I've known Ron a few years now, and he stands for integrity. And I think I agree with him. About teaching, you can't teach that skill. You learn that you have your core values, and sometimes in the world we live in, maybe we get some people that have different values than we do, and so maybe we talk about teaching ethics as a course, and I don't think you can teach ethics. I think ethics is that integrity that you have, and there may be values that within the accounting profession there are certain things, or in the legal profession, people used to say legal ethics were mutually exclusive or an oxymoron, but in the accounting profession, it's known for integrity. It took a hit in the peak mark years, but I think that people would say, well, CPAs are a little stodgy, or they're conservative, and sometimes they don't like to have fun. But I think what they were saying is there's something old-fashioned about integrity and values. And we could use a whole lot more of that. And instead of trying to teach ethics, we ought to be talking about what integrity is in situations. I love about when I had an opportunity thinking about a tax document. It would have been real easy to just say, well, nobody's ever going to sell it, just put a back date on it. And the client said, I can't. I need to be honest with you, I did not prepare. It was on an election where a widow elects out. Disclaimer, Ron, in the state.
Yeah.
The client is 2 years later, and I found it when I was cleaning up filing. The client said, don't you remember we decided we didn't want to disclaim because we needed the money? And so and I was tempted. I thought, well, it would be easy, no one will ever see it, but I couldn't do it. And it was a great relief when I found out that had I taken the easy way and tried to cheat, I could have caused real problems if anything ever came up, because the client had made a different decision. And I didn't lose a lot of sleep over that, but I've used that as an example a lot in the tax classes when I was teaching the graduate level tax classes, that you are going to come to points in your career where you might be tempted. And there's no substitution for, we could all say, what would Ron Jackson do? And he's going to do the right thing. And sometimes we have a little trouble. People want to say what the right thing is to fit their situation. But integrity is when you have those core values that you learn as a child, and then you had mentors in that firm. I've told Ron a lot of times when I was in accounting, the silk stocking firm in Pensacola was Saltmarsh, Cleaveland Gund. We didn't really have a big firm here, so they were built on integrity. And Ron lived the life as a member of that firm.
Yeah, integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's looking, and that's what you did, and that speaks volumes. I think another thing that you have, Rick, that I think is very important, and I've seen this from you. I've heard other people talk about it, and that is an openness where you listen to people. You're open to people discussing things with you, even if it is something you might not want to hear or don't agree with, but you still listen to people. And I think that's extremely important. I as well have tried to do that over the years. Don't know how well I've done, but certainly that makes people feel important and valued. You know, if you listen to them, even if you don't agree with them, and you explain to them why you don't agree with them, you can probably count on them to come back to you and tell you what is happening and support you in your decisions, because you've had that dialogue with them, and they feel comfortable knowing that you're trying to do the right thing. And I think that's clearly one of the many traits that you have demonstrated already in your leadership out at UWF. I think it's extremely important.
That's humbling, Ron, and I want to follow up on that, Allie, if it's okay. Mm-hmm. I've called Ron a lot of times. When I became chair of accounting, he was one of the first people, if not the first person I called, and talked about putting an advisory group together. And I've called him with issues about students. I've called him with numerous issues, and Ron always listens and he's busy. And it's not like he's sitting around all afternoon and saying, well, I don't have anything to do. I hope someone calls with a problem. I mean, it takes time away, but you were always a great listener, and you care about this university, and you've given leadership, whether it's been on the Accounting Advisory Council or trying to get this College of Business Council going. I return that compliment. You are a listener, and gosh, I can remember us talking about firms over in Mississippi, accounting firms I knew, and the role you had played when they would be in a dispute or something, and they would call you in for not just your professional and accounting skills, but your leadership. You would listen, try to help people reach a decision. Some of the great stories you tell me, I wouldn't share them here, but coming from you, that's a humbling comment. But I will say this: my mother taught me about leadership to be kind to people. And a lot of that was what you're saying, is that culture of being kind. And I think that's a hallmark over at Saltmarsh under your leadership, is your people are always kind. You call over there, they treat you professional, no matter how busy they are. They may not be able to say, well, I can't just go in and interrupt fine right now, but they'll say, well, I'll get to him. So kindness, I think, is another way to bundle up some of the things we talk about as leaders. It's how we treat people. And I've heard folks say it. I think before we started taping, we were talking about maybe you said at the beginning, treat people the way you wanted to be treated.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you, Rick. Appreciate the compliment. I've lived up to it.
And I have to say that listening is a skill that we all probably can sharpen all the time. And that is something that I would say, I don't know if the two of you are going to agree with this, but it is something that in my younger years, I didn't do so much of. And that truly listening and active listening are a skill. And I think we need to, hone those skills a little bit more. But yeah, both of you, very good listeners. Thanks for listening to me. I appreciate that.
Well, it has been said numerous times that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we talk.
Yeah, and also with that, I want to kind of loop back. You also mentioned, Ron, about teams. You quickly mentioned about teams. And one of the challenges, and we're going to put it, and it's being recorded, one of the challenges I think across, is getting students to understand about teamwork and why they have to work in teams and all of that. But this is especially in business. Teams happen everywhere, and you mentioned that. So how do you best communicate with teams? What have you learned as a leader how to do that? If you could give a few things off the top of your head about teams. I mean, we all work in teams, whether you like people or don't like people. Sometimes you hire people to include their differences of opinions, but that also comes with some challenges. So over the years, what pieces of advice for teams can you give us?
Well, we try to hire the smartest people that we can find, and ones who have personalities and values that fit our organization. We have terminated folks before because they didn't fit. They were smart people, okay, and they maybe worked hard, but if they couldn't get along with, say, our tax team or an audit team, whatever, we can't have people who cannot function on a team. Just simply doesn't work in our profession, the profession I'm in. So it's extremely important to do that. And you see different types of, athletes that have come through college, and I'm not going to name the sports. Certain sports are very much team sports, okay? Others are more individual sports. And I can promise you, looking at what sports they played, I can almost consistently tell you whether they're going to be a team player or not in the business world because of how they functioned on in the different sports. But I won't go into which ones are, which ones aren't. That probably, given a little thought, you could figure that out. And it's great to be very competitive. That's okay to be very competitive, but you can't do it at the expense of others around you. If you excel in what you do, we're going to notice that. Yeah. But one of the ways that you can excel is to bring everybody on your team up with you.
Yeah.
You can't do that. If it's all about you, then you need to go out and be a sole practitioner in the CPA world. And there are a lot of those. They're in the right place. And many times that's why they're there, is because they don't really function well in a larger environment, don't care to, don't want to, and that's okay. They're smart people still. Yeah, we look for folks that are a good fit for our culture and for our team, and we have not hired people because we, they may have excellent grades, checked all the boxes on the resume, but just did not come across as being team players. We, again, have terminated people for the same reason.
It's funny because I came across, and I think it is back here. So you're talking about culture fit. That is so hard to understand. It's so hard to teach, but you know it, right? You know it.
Yes.
And sometimes, as much as you really, really want to work somewhere, or you really, really, really want to hire somebody, they're not the right fit. And Zappos, who is in Las Vegas, so when I was teaching there, we'd take students and we would go to Zappos, and they hire, but the culture is too much. And when we would get through and do the tour, they were like, half of the students would say, I would never work there. The other half is like, oh my goodness, this is great, this is me. But the point is, they would everybody goes through customer service training, no matter what level. You go through basically being on the phones and to understand that. But they would also do a buyout. I think it's after the first month. They would actually buy out the potential employees if they wanted to leave. If they figured, you know what, I would rather invest in them from the month out and train them for the culture. And I thought, I have to say, I kind of like that. Now, don't do that for me, Rick, but, maybe I'll take the buyout. I don't know. But, it's interesting, and I'm going to kind of bring that around because, Ron, you're talking about teams, but also with that comes culture. And it's where Rick is, Rick's been in this position a very hard less than year, because this has been the craziest year. But looking at where you're going, Rick, and the team that he's putting together is the cultural fit. So it's like any leader, and I find myself, and I'll hand over the mic to Rick, but I find myself saying to Rick, so where are you going? What are we thinking about this? Because I have to be in sync with what he's thinking, although it may be challenged, is what I'm hearing from the listening part of it. But ultimately, it comes down to a vision and getting everybody on the same team as the culture changes as well. What are your thoughts, Rick? Make sure you're unmuted. Okay.
I'm not even sure how to respond to that other than to say I think that what we have put together here is a team where we have shared responsibility. And I like to say you have to have a leader at the end of the day to assume responsibility when something goes wrong. But we're trying to create very similar to your team concept, I'm sure, Ron, where people can excel and we give them an opportunity, and then we don't, I'm not looking to take credit for